All right, good morning. Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Welcome to the August 23rd meeting of the New London Planning Board CIP Committee, Capital Improvement Project, or Capital Improvement Planning. I should know that. Planning or project? Program. I was wrong. Third try. Yeah, thanks for coming. And we will talk today about energy and the library. So we'll go ahead and get started with Jamie Hess. Thanks, Jamie. If you can just, talk into the mic, that'd be great. Thank you. So, Jamie, in your case, I was just going to say, too, that I figured it made sense for you to come because, obviously, you're best equipped to talk a little bit about what the Energy Committee would hope to do in the coming years. And normally, our budget, I'm also on the Energy Committee, is about the cost of an iPad, so it's a pretty small budget normally, but we're hoping to do some bigger things. So we thought it made sense for you to come and talk about this. So do you want to just walk through some of the projects and what we're kind of hoping to do?
Right. Well, just to give a little background, in 2018 at our town meeting, we passed a warrant article pledging our municipality to 100% renewable electricity by the year 2030, and to help local residents, businesses, and institutions achieve the same goal. There are also some 2050 goals, but I think for the time being, we're focused on the 2030 goal of converting our electricity use over to 100% renewable. And we've already made some significant strides toward that goal because back in 2020, we installed 2 municipal solar arrays, which produce an estimated 40% of the electricity used by town facilities. And by town facilities, I'm including this building, the library, of course, and all other town buildings, plus the sewer department pumping stations, which are a huge user of electricity. So we're at approximately 40%, and that was achieved at zero cost to the taxpayers by bringing in outside investors to own the municipal solar panels. And we signed an agreement with the investors agreeing to purchase all the electricity produced by those solar panels for a 25-year period, but there's an option to buy the system from the investors if the town chooses to do so, and that option could be exercised as soon as the beginning of 2026. So in order to achieve that 100% renewable goal, it's not necessarily mandatory to purchase those investor-owned arrays, but it could be very attractive to the town. And because the return on our investment will be significant, we'll get a significant discount off the original cost of the system, the solar panels, and so we could receive up to a 10% annual return on the investment if we chose to buy those panels. And we have been putting aside money for that purpose in the Capital Reserve Fund, which I think is named the Energy Conservation Capital Reserve Fund, but it's for both energy conservation and the transition to renewable energy. So if we choose to exercise that option in 2026, we can draw on the capital reserve, but we'll also need additional funding. And if we can obtain a low-interest loan, then we could, we won't get a 10% return anymore, but we'll get a significant return greater than what we'd be paying out in interest on the loan. So I don't know if you're interested in specific numbers, but I know we've got other things to talk about. And so part 2 of our 2-pronged assault is to find a place to get the other 60% of our electric use to make our municipality 100% renewable. And it's interesting to look at some numbers on what that might cost. And what's going to boost us along is the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, which contains a 30% subsidy for municipalities and other nonprofits, which is really going to help us to own the new solar arrays outright rather than bringing in outside investors to own them. So that'll maximize the town's return. So we know how much it costs to put in the existing solar arrays because the installers told us it was about $550,000. And that got us to 40%. So if you do the math, which I did a while ago, but I haven't done again recently, getting the additional 60% is going to cost us something like $800,000 to $900,000. And of course, that's a goal that we want to achieve by 2030. So we've got 6 years to achieve the goal. We could spread that investment out over a 6-year period. And again, this is not money that's going down the drain. It's money that's going to be invested to produce a huge savings in our budget for electricity. Basically reducing that budget to near zero.
That's great. Jamie, thank you. So other, I know, like, we've talked recently about, various sites where this could happen. You want to just talk a little bit about, like, the stump dump? Do you want to just give a quick update on that?
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
So, yeah, and I can also give you a couple of quick numbers on the potential buyout. So as far as where are we going to put enough solar arrays to get us to 100% renewable, we had identified 5 sites plus a 6th potential site. And when I say a 6th potential site, that would be if we build a new police facility, we can design solar into that facility from the ground up. And I mean literally from the ground up because it's doubtful that we could put enough solar panels on the roof of a new police facility to generate all the electricity that facility needs. So we'd need some, hopefully some additional land nearby the facility to put some panels on the ground as well. But anyway, that aside, we did consider 5 sites, and we met with Bob Harrington and Sam Clark to go over the pros and cons of each site. So the site that came out on top, at least in the short term, was the stump dump. And so we, at the beginning of this month, on August 1st, we submitted a grant application to the state of New Hampshire for $120,000 to pay for most of a brand new solar array at the stump dump. That grant would cover about 90% of the cost, and we would have to come up with the remaining 10%, but we would actually get that back as a rebate through the Inflation Reduction Act. So if we get this grant and it's fully funded, we basically get a free solar array. And that would be a 50 kilowatt array, which would offset 10% of our electric use and get us to 50%. So where would the other 50% come from? Well, we have other sites under consideration. Now, Bob Harrington, when we mentioned the transfer station, He wasn't exactly on board with that because I guess there's a plan in the works to totally revamp the transfer station and use most, if not all, of the available land there. So I would just point out that if we do revamp the transfer station, any plan to do so should include at least some solar. Maybe enough to offset the electric use at the transfer station, maybe not enough to export to other locations around town. So in addition to the stump dump and the transfer station, we looked at the roof of the fire station, which is a very attractive site for solar because anytime you have existing consumption and you can offset that consumption with so-called behind-the-meter electrons, you save more money than if you're just creating electrons and exporting them to the grid. So we'd really like to put solar on at least part of the fire station roof, and the only roadblock there is this rumor that we need to remodel and expand the fire station to make room for bigger and taller fire engines. So as soon as we can make a decision on whether or not we're going to remodel the fire station, and if so, which portion of the fire station is going to be remodeled, then we can make a plan to install solar on whatever part of the building is not due to be remodeled. And that would be definitely a low-hanging fruit in terms of the savings or return in our investment in terms of avoided cost. So what's left? There's the capped landfill on Mountain Road, where there are a lot of landfills that are currently being used for solar because they qualify as brownfields and they can't really be used for anything else. And under the Inflation Reduction Act, you get an additional 10% rebate for siting solar on a brownfield. Now, there's a question on whether you can put solar panels directly on top of the cap or whether they have to go around the perimeter. I've heard stories of cities and towns around New Hampshire taking either or both approaches, but we could do whatever's most prudent. So we've got the stump dump, the transfer station, the fire station, the capped landfill on Mountain Road, and I believe there was one other. Tim, do you recall what it was? I'm trying to remember. Because it slipped my mind at the moment. Oh, I know. So there's additional land behind the sewer department where we could potentially put more solar panels in addition to those we have now. And that site as well might qualify as a brownfield and get the additional 10%. So, things to wrap up, things to consider are, first of all, do we want to buy out the investors and own those existing panels at the sewer department and highway garage? And if we do that, what would it cost? I think a ballpark estimate would be about $275,000, which is half of the installed cost 5 years ago. And we've got, I believe, $165,000 already squirreled away in the capital reserve. Or is it 100? It's 135. Sorry about that. So if we want to go that route, we're about halfway there, and we need to come up with about another 140,000. So that's to buy the existing arrays, which won't get us any closer to 100% renewable. It would just be a sound financial decision. So then there's the grant, which we might or might not get for the stump dump. And if we don't get it, perhaps we could be thinking about, could we fund this solar array some other way? And one approach that the Energy Committee hasn't considered up to this point, but might be worth looking at, is maybe doing some fundraising, if that's allowed. There are a lot of solar champions in New London. We have something like 100 solar homes, and maybe some of those solar homeowners or people who can't install solar at their own home for whatever reason, they might make a donation toward municipal solar. Definitely worth looking into.
So Jamie, for our purposes of putting these projects into the CIP, and for the CIP is not necessarily a funding document, so the grants and things will come into play with the budget on the revenue side of things. So for this, we're just looking for an overall project cost and about what year you think that may happen. So for the buyout of the existing solar panels, do you think that would be fiscal year 26 if it were to happen, or meaning starting July 1st of 25?
And running through June 30th of 26.
Correct.
Well, that would be the ideal time frame to make that purchase, yeah.
And what was that total again? 275 for the buyout?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay.
Do you think we need to round up at all, just for whatever reason, or?
Well, I mean, it might be safer to say 300.
Okay.
Hopefully less, obviously, but.
Yeah, some of that would come from the capital reserve.
Yep. So it keeps doing this, sorry. Let me just, bear with me for a second, see if I can. And so then that information would be on the revenue side in the budget for next year. And so when the Energy Committee is preparing their budget for FY27, they'll have the $300,000 potential purchase of buyout, and then on the capital reserve side, you'd have the how much you're taking from that and how much you plan to raise from the additional taxes of the general fund of 26, right?
Right, so 135 in the capital reserve and 165 to come from other sources.
And so then for the new systems, and I don't know that we should tie in locations at this point for the potential in the CIP, just because it seems like there's a bit of ambiguity around that. And I looked back at the fire station. We have the planning process not even starting until 2029. And so if it goes anything like the police station does, that planning process could go on for years. So
right.
that may not be a viable spot. Maybe it will be, but by 2030. So we may not want to tie into specific locations. Do you think that the $900,000 investment would happen in one swoop of a single project in a fiscal year, or do you think that it would be, in multiple small projects? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how in our spreadsheet we put it into a specific year. What we've done with the Conservation Commission in the past, because obviously they have large land acquisition that's a little bit, they don't know what land they're buying. We put the overall amount that they need by the year that they anticipate purchasing land. So in your case, we'd put it in 2030, and then it's up to the Budget Committee and the Selectmen to decide between now and that ultimate 2030, are they setting aside money in capital reserves? And maybe we treat this similarly, although you could be spending some of that earlier than 2030.
Right, well, perhaps the stump dump would happen before any of the other projects. There's no reason why all the solar projects have to happen at the exact same time. They could be staggered one per year, and there might be a year that we don't do anything. So if we did the stump dump first, the total cost on that project, including the utility line upgrade, is about $150,000. And as I said before, we've applied for a $120,000 grant, but if you're not considering where the money is coming from, then the important number is that $150,000 total cost.
Thanks, Jamie. And Adam, I think that's a good idea to do it the Conservation Commission way, so that we know we have ultimately to spend roughly X amount in order to meet the goal by 2030. And to your point, Jamie, if we end up doing it, hopefully, not all in one fell swoop, but, I mean, I guess that would be ideal from a solar standpoint. But regardless, we may end up doing it piecemeal until then. I think just having it in there so the Budget Committee can see it is helpful.
Yeah, but, excuse me, it might be good to break out the stump dump, since we already know, we already have a design and a price tag for it.
Yeah, so we could
And
do
then-
that one sooner, and then the balance of the 900 is an example.
Right.
For
So
2030.
So the balance would be 750.
And in what year did you say that the stump dump would hopefully be on board, Jamie? Would that be?
Well, if we get the grant, that's going to be installed in the, probably in the current fiscal year.
Okay, so that would drop out of the CIP altogether. So we're looking at the confines of the CIP now are fiscal year 26 through 35. Is that right? Yep.
I wonder, though, if it doesn't make sense to include it, just not for now, because if we don't get the grant, we're going to have to do it.
We'll have to
do that.
postpone it if we don't get the grant.
Correct, but I almost feel like we should put it in the postponed category.
Okay.
With the 150, and then the balance, that 750 and 2030. I don't know if you
Okay,
guys
so
think so.
so if we put it in fiscal year 26, saying that if you don't get the grant to do it in 25, you would hope to carry it out the following year, and then put the 750.
Total later.
Right.
Great.
Okay. So then the three projects we have in here then are the solar array at the stump dump in fiscal year 26, hopefully 25 if the grant's successful, for 150,000. The remaining solar infrastructure to meet the 100% renewable energy goal by 2030 for 750,000. And then a buyout of the existing solar panels, I should say solar arrays, at the sewer and DPW facilities for 300,000 in 26. Is that?
Does that make sense to you, Jamie?
Sure. And if having two projects in fiscal 26 is a problem, the buyout could certainly be postponed a year.
Yeah, that's luckily, the contract will have gone far enough along that we then have the right to exercise it whenever we want, and the investors have been open to the idea that it could be essentially whenever, which is good.
Right. Yeah, the investors are definitely at or beyond retirement age, and they would be totally fine getting their money out of that project whenever we choose to do so. So the ball's in our court starting in January of 26.
And so if it were to move to 27, the buyout would go down because of another year's worth of payment? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any questions from the committee for Jamie? Thanks for that thorough presentation, Jamie. Yeah, Paul, sorry.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Good, Paul.
In the projects that you're doing, are you subject to the 25% reduction if it's not used on site?
Oh, okay. So I think what you're referring to, Paul, is the Eversource electric rates, where if you export solar electrons to the grid, you don't get the full retail value. In other words, if you had to buy them back later, you'd have to buy them back for more than you sold them for. So 25% is just a ballpark figure. It all depends on the size of the array and and some other factors as well. Because when you export to the grid for small projects, you get back the supply charge, the transmission charge, and 25% of the distribution charge. And in total, it comes out to about 75 to 80% of the retail value of that electricity. So that's why a project at the fire station where there's significant electric use already would give you a bit more value for each electron you generate than a project at the stump dump where there's currently no electric use. Although there could be electric use in the future because it's a tough place to work, especially in the winter if you're a town employee and you're out at the stump dump and there's absolutely no shelter and no bathroom. So I've heard that it's on the wish list to put in at least a basic trailer that could have a heat source and maybe a chemical toilet, if not a real bathroom. And we could provide heat for that structure from using a heat pump with electricity from the solar panels, and then that would instantly make the electricity more valuable to us. But yes, the fire station would be, from a financial standpoint, a better site than the stump dump. But the problem is we don't know if it's going to be remodeled, and it's really not financially viable to put in a solar array if there's a chance that it might have to be removed and disassembled within the first 25 years.
That's helpful. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Paul, for the question.
Sorry about the long answer.
No, it's good. Any other questions?
Just a few, if I could.
Yeah, please.
Charlie Kelsey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Charlie.
I serve on the Budget Committee, so I also am the representative of that committee for this group as well. And last year, your committee produced a really exceptional narrative from my perspective that outlined much of the information that you shared this morning. And my assumption on the buyout of the current solar system rate of return, which was originally projected at 10%, would be modified based upon whatever interest rate we would be able to secure. And so the ROI would not be 10, but it'd be something between 5 and 10. Would an update of that narrative be possible to provide in addition to what we've heard here? Because I think, I will speak for the Budget Committee, that document was incredibly helpful because it gave us both revenue, ROI, and cost, and sources, which in isolation, when we look at capital investment, it gets a little daunting because we don't have the full value of the thinking and the facts that go into the calculation of ROI. So I applaud that report and would really encourage and ask that it be updated because I think it would be incredibly helpful to us.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And it's just up to you to decide when is the appropriate time to have that discussion.
Right. And I think in the budget process, we will get into that discussion. And I think with that data, it's just going to be a much more informed and better discussion because the decision-making becomes, what do we do now, what do we do later, what do we do, what don't we do? And the data you've provided, the thoroughness of it gives us a really good picture of value as well as return. So that would be helpful.
That's great.
And could I ask one last question, because you were getting into that point about if New London becomes a net producer to the grid, our energy cost as a town is theoretically it's zero. The rate of return you were starting to comment on the impact on an individual array's rate of return and discounts and so forth, and penalties if you don't use it or you need it back. But if we looked at 2030 and we were energy independent or on renewables and a net producer, how much money are we talking about that generating generally?
Well, I haven't really, and the Energy Committee hasn't really considered the possibility of New London being a net producer, because I don't see a really good rate of return
Okay.
for becoming a large generator of electricity. So the main goal for most people and most entities that install solar, the main goal is to reduce your electric bill to zero, not to start generating revenue.
Okay.
Because the more revenue you try to generate, the lower the return. Unless you're talking multi-million-dollar commercial scale investments.
Yep.
And then you would have to get up to several times the total energy use of our town to make it commercially viable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have one comment for the entire committee in relationship to the comment of the fire department as an ideal site for solar. And Karen, who's here in the audience, we met with Jay Lyon earlier in the week. We talked about what's the, and I may have done it after the official meeting that we had, but it was about, the conversation was, what if we modified the existing roof instead of building a new roof with a new structure which has a significant cost to it? And with your comment of the ideal, the characteristics it has that are ideal for solar, I would encourage us to maybe think about a renovation project at the fire department that looked at the existing roof, which would mean new trusses, new angles, and so forth, but it would be a new roof, it would be a lower capital investment, and it would accomplish the solar objective as well, or could. So that's a general comment for the group to consider.
That's great. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, Bibi, go ahead. Yeah.
Jamie, I have one quick question. With the stump dump panels, could those, could those be used to power the water precinct?
Well, we certainly have the water precinct headquarters are right next door.
Right.
And yeah, I think we could either set up a net metering arrangement with the water precinct, or perhaps if they were interested, we could maybe feed the electricity directly into their meter rather than installing one of our own.
Because when you were talking before about Paul's question about the 25% situation, and I can't articulate it as well as you do, but would that take care of that if we could use that electricity right on the building, basically on the same property? But I guess it's different ownership. I don't know how that all works.
Right. So I actually did some work with the water precinct a few years ago, and we looked at their electric bills, and we actually got them onto the same third-party electric supply contract that the town was on,
Yeah.
which the town is no longer on because now we have community power,
Yeah.
which is even better. So the outcome of that analysis was that they use very little electricity at the headquarters building. The vast majority is used at the pumping station over by Colby Point. And so basically, we would have to rely on Eversource to ship the electrons from the stump dump over to Colby Point, and then we would get the lower reimbursement rate as a result. So we could, you know, we could help out the water precinct, but only to a very small degree because they don't use much electricity at their headquarters.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, though, BB.
Does the school have solar on the roof of it? No? I mean, I've always just sort of wondered, there's a lot of roof there, that if that were able to be utilized both the
Yeah,
school
I
and the town, or some sort of a joint, but I didn't know if the conversation had ever happened.
It's starting to happen, right? John has tried to reach out, John Ellis, I think, has tried to reach out, and I think the school district has talked many years about solar panels on many of the buildings, high school in particular, so I think they're open to having those conversations, and I believe they might just be starting, but Jamie might know better.
Yeah, so I actually met with John Fortney
Okay.
a week or two ago,
Oh.
and I filled him in on all the discussions that have happened about solar at the Kearsarge schools. And of course, the school district has a decarbonization committee, which is chaired by David Bates, but I believe it hasn't met in quite some time. And John Fortney wasn't even aware that such a committee existed. So he took some detailed notes at our meeting, and I told him about the Inflation Reduction Act and the 30% rebate, and mentioned that Winfried had arranged for a solar evaluation at the high school, and they did identify a good potential site, which would require cooperation from the town of Sutton to get an easement to bring power under a dirt road or over a dirt road. And the town administrator in Sutton, when I told her about it, she was really excited about the possibility that Sutton could help the school district get solar at the high school. So there's lots of groundwork been done, but no actual proposal ready to move forward on. But obviously there's not just the high school, but all the other facilities of the district, including here in New London, where there's certainly potential to do solar. And so the Energy Committee has had discussions with not just the school district, but also the college and the hospital, which are probably the three largest electric users in town. And that's part of our mission to help those institutions achieve the same goals that we've set for ourselves as a town.
Yeah, it's a great question, BB. Thank you. Everybody, Charlie, you're good? Yes. Cool, thank you. Paul, you're good? Okay, I know we're a little tight on time. Karen, did you have any questions? Awesome, thank you. Jamie, thank you so much for coming in. Really helpful.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and thanks everyone for being here. It was really fun talking about all these opportunities.
Yes.
And I know you want to talk about the library as well, so
Yeah.
I'll sign off and hand it over to you. There you go.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks, Jamie, too. And I should just say, since I have the mic, the amount of effort that Jamie put into, and a couple other people on the committee on the grant application was enormous. So hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll get it. But thanks again, Jamie. I know you had another appointment to run to, so appreciate you coming in.
And Tim, thanks to you for being an energy champion here in New London for even more years than I have.
Who's counting?
So we'll keep on saving energy, saving money, and reducing carbon emissions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk, just in the interest of time, let's quickly shift to the library. And welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. My name is Richard Tutwiler. I'm the new library director of the Tracy Memorial Library. And I obviously have quite a few capital projects going on and more running down the pipe. So I'm just going to kind of go through them, starting with the one on the top there, because it is one that we are actively engaged in. So in fiscal 2025, we will be looking at renovating a large portion of the library exterior, and that project will likely go into fiscal year 26. So this has to do with certain areas of the library that are in, severe disrepair, and, in terms of triaging our facility, these are the ones that need to be remedied first. Ultimately, there's parts of the slate roof that are, falling apart. So there is water leaking inside the building. And we've identified 2 flat membranes of that building as particularly in need of immediate care. So to that end, we've already contracted out with Frank Anzalone. He's the architect who has, kind of worked with the library for many, many years, and he knows it probably better than anyone in town. And he has gone through a series of recommendations, and we've taken that to heart. And I met with the roofers and Frank Lamar of Milestone Construction earlier this week. They've gone ahead and taken a look at the project. We have an agreement in principle with them. We're still waiting for a quote and action plan. But for now, for our current fiscal year, we have $60,000, that the Board of Selectmen have approved for, exterior repair and maintenance. And that's what we're going to be kind of spending the vast majority of our time on. Because of what we assume the cost of this overall project to be, we are going to end up kicking it out into next fiscal as well. We always knew that this was going to be a large enough project where we'd probably have to, go through 2 years to get it done. But those are the ones that we're doing in the near future. We have some outstanding fiscal year 24 projects that are also still going on. The mold remediation needs one more duct cleaning, and our generator to be replaced is due to be installed at the end of next month. I just worked with Adam earlier this week to get permits for that. So we're on track for those, though. So any questions about those before I kind of continue to move down the list? All right. So next up, we have interior renovations. So these are, I know it says 28 in the grid and 29 in the project description. We're actually going to be shooting for 28 on these. So these are interior renovations, replacing and repairing the flooring. For those of you who have been inside the library lately, our flooring, the carpet in particular, is very antiquated. It needs new carpet. Now, I think we can get some solid more years out of it. I'm in the process of getting a scheduled deep cleaning, just to make sure that it's as, allergen safe as we can make it as a, public facility. But that is a high priority. And in addition to that, remodeling the kitchen and the bathrooms. A lot of these are capital projects that, as I've been looking through, older CIP plans, I see them continuously be kind of, the can's being kicked down the road. So I know it's been identified as a need. But as I was going over this with Adam, I really wanted to make sure we were addressing, one of these per year. So we're not getting everything backed up. Like, to be honest, I feel like I'm kind of walking into. In addition to that, replacement of interior painting and some furniture. There's some really beautiful furniture that has, to be blunt, exceeded its lifestyle at the library, and it just is in need of replacement. And some of those pieces are going to be quite large. There's some, very old antique furniture that's in utilization, probably needs to either be, repaired by a specialist or just outright replaced for something more modern. Any questions? Sure.
Hi, Richard. I'm Charlie Kelsey. Nice to meet you and welcome.
Nice to meet you, Charlie.
There was a recent survey planning process done for a strategic plan for the library. I don't know where you are in the process of trying to absorb what that has revealed and whether or not that, which way I presume has programming implications, would then in turn have facility implications to accommodate programming, and any kind of thoughts or projections of the implications of that, if you have that at this
Sure.
point?
Yeah, so we did conduct a strategic planning. The next kind of milestone for that is going to be in October 21st and 22nd, where we have a strategic retreat with Rethinking Libraries. Our Board of Trustees, our library management group, will be meeting with them to kind of develop a more firm action plan and develop a process to apply the results of that strategic planning to our operations moving forward. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with other strategic planning, in my career. And, one of the great things about a strategic plan is it helps you define your decision-making moving forward. One of the challenges of a strategic plan is you create one and pat yourself on the back, throw it in a file, and it's never to be seen again.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that does not happen. To that end, I have reviewed the most recent kind of SWOT analysis and 100-page report. Of particular note as pertains to this group, they do see a dramatic need for us to provide some sort of expanded, more modern teenage use space. So that is something that I'm very mindful of moving forward. Like most places in New London, we are kind of, constrained on our available space. So it's going to be a challenge, I think, to provide that within our current infrastructure. But there are a few ideas I do have if we can maybe build some additional exterior shed work and things like that to move some library supplies out there, make more interior library spacing available for public use. So that's something we're definitely looking at. To me, that's kind of, even coming from Arizona, I identified that as a need for this community before I saw the strategic plan. So I know that that's something we definitely want to do. To be continued on October 21st. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so next up, so we're kicking out a fiscal here to 27. So parking area paving, curbing, and painting. This one has remained unchanged. For any of you who've been outside the library, and we have a very limited parking area, and that little driveway, it's just in disrepair. It needs to be repaved, lots of cracks. Many people have backed up into our curbs and we're missing some chunks out of it. So it's just, again, it's one of those things that just needs to happen. It doesn't necessarily need to happen right now. Again, let's make sure that we're triaging what we need to do right now. Not seeing any questions, so next up, and then we're going to 29 and 30, so a new furnace and updated mechanical systems. So I'm sure many of you know probably the library process better than I have over the past decade. There's been some HVAC replacements, new boilers, and while all these systems are great, it does create some challenges when you have a little bit of a hodgepodge of systems. So that has been one thing that we've identified both through, the strategic plan and just regular maintenance of the building is let's try to get something that we know works together. I can tell you myself, in the brief time I've been here, I've had to order a dehumidifier because certain areas of the library just are, having too much moisture in the air to negatively affect the enjoy and comfort by our patrons, and honestly, the collection itself, it's probably not best for them to be in a room with, over 70% humidity. So that's just another thing we're mindful of. Is it a pressing need right now? No, we can manage it, and we have been, but it's something down the line we want to continue to look at.
Just one question on that. I know that new furnaces and mechanical systems, would it be replacing the entire system so that it works in concert, or would it be just areas that are most efficient and making it hopefully work with existing
Hopefully
boilers?
Something that could work within the existing.
Okay.
To be honest, I haven't had a good chance to review that existing
Yep.
old proposal. It's been sitting in our CIP planning for a number of years is my understanding, but I haven't had a chance to review what their ideas are. I have had conversations with, the HVAC repair people. We've called in twice since I've been here. And, it's an old building, and we're doing our best to keep it running, but sometimes when you have systems that aren't designed to work together, there are challenges.
Absolutely, yeah. And then partly, too, building off what we heard from Jamie in the earlier area, too, it might be worth, at the end of this, we got time, but to think about heat pumps as well, because they, are efficient, and they do both heating and cooling, and can also just take they often have that function, too, of removing moisture from the air, so they're pretty scalable, too, so.
Yeah, my understanding is they recently installed a year or two ago, before my time, mini splits within the facility, which seem to be working well enough. But is that the most efficient usage that we can get out of them? I'm not sure.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be honest. Coming from Arizona, I didn't even know what a mini split was until. But they are all over the place. So there you go.
Yep. Cool. Thanks. Anyway, just wanted to ask that.
Absolutely. Okay,
Any
and then
other
our
questions
last
before
two
we go?
items, again, they are roof related. The garden shed roof, I put that in as a $20,000 repair in fiscal '28. As I was meeting with that roofing company earlier this week, they pointed out, hey, that other roof doesn't look so great either, and because when it rains, it pours. At that time, I wasn't actually quite sure if that was the purview of the library or the Tracy Memorial Garden. I have since looked through it, and it is our responsibility to maintain the exterior of that shed. So that may be a concern. I need to do some more digging on that one. And then the last one is the new roof cost. Now, our current estimates, based on the multiple contractors we've had come in the past, was that we can get a good amount of mileage with our current roof with some significant repairs and then a sustained maintenance schedule. So they quoted us, you could get at least 10, maybe 20 more years out of it. That is our preference. However, in the event that that is not the case, I just wanted to make sure that this number for the new roof was sitting somewhere on the CIP plan. It is my sincere hope that I can get rid of this next year. But in the event that it just doesn't work out the way that the architect and roofers are hoping that it can, that may be a challenge that we may need to work through. So that's the reason that one is on there.
And just so everyone knows, I didn't realize that the column didn't print on the front page, so there is a 350. It just printed on the back of page 3.
Richard, not as familiar with slate roofs as I am home roofs. What is the useful life of a slate roof, a new one?
A new one? Well, my understanding with a slate roof is that if you continue to maintain it well and you have access to replacement slate tiles, it'll last, 50 plus years, higher than that.
Going back to my architectural technology classes in college, essentially slate can be in perpetuity. Where they typically fail is in the underlayment. And so there comes a point where you have to replace the roof because either there was no ice and snow shield below because it was installed in 1920, or the actual wood has rotted due to a repair that went unrepaired. And so though the slates could be put back on once they were taken off, oftentimes in homeowners, it's more expensive and they end up replacing it with something else. But the slates themselves, if maintained, they don't really have a life expectancy. I mean, they can last forever.
That is an excellent question that I actually don't know the answer to, but I believe it's been there for a significant amount of time. It was, to my understanding, a part of the historic building. So obviously there's a great amount of community support for that building as a historic building, and we want to continue to have that beautiful slate roof if we can. I was talking to Adam yesterday, and there are some places within the area that have slate roofs that the individual slate pieces that needed to be repaired because they had some issue had happened. The quarry that they pulled that slate from, they can't pull any more of it. So you can replace it with something similar, but you can't replace it with the same pieces of slate that you had been using prior. So that's a consideration. Luckily, it seems like most of our slate tiles are in pretty good shape. We do have a handful that are in need of replacement as a part of this current project that we're about to start. But the pieces of slate themselves are in good shape. So that's not a serious consideration for us right now.
The year on the tax card is 1880 that it was built, but I don't know if that's actually reflective of when it was constructed there, because that building was moved, or if that's the original construction date. There's slate on portions of the building that were not original to the first. So it's probably a mishmash of years, how long it's been on there, but I would say a century plus.
Yeah, the question I was going to get to is, I've sat in this committee, I think, 6, 7 years. The roof's been on there every year, and for not insignificant amounts. I don't think you've spent $350,000 in the last 6 years, but it's been well over 100, I would bet. And yes, I mean, various leaks and stuff like that. And I'm not surprised that, as Adam says, it's the underlayment, but the underlayment that's 50 or 60 years old is very different than what they can use now. So I don't know, just a gut reaction that this seems to be something that's a continuing problem.
I definitely think, no. You inherit challenges and you do your best to get them resolved. I do think at some point, we're going to need to do a more firm addressment. The way I'm looking at it is, in terms of leveraging, taxpayer dollars, how much can we reuse what we consistently have until it gets to a point where we do need to do a full replacement. I hope it's well past my career, but it's certainly a possibility.
And I think the $350,000 likely is for a material that is not slate. We have a house in town that's within 1,000 square feet of what the library is, and they had a roof replacement last year with slate composite that presumably was cheaper than actual slate, and that's why they went with it. And it reached $600,000 for the roof replacement. So I think, the 350 is likely for something substantially less quality and long term.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Are there other questions from the committee? Karen? Okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah, please, yep.
Adam and I talked offline last night following another meeting, and the topic was water and water supply, and we know we have a significant challenge ahead of us as a town. And a lot of numbers were thrown out at a meeting with the water precinct about alternative sources, and they were big numbers. And we're not at a point of, maybe from the select board, of saying we need to pursue this series of paths of consideration. I'm just raising it to say and question whether or not we should think about earmarking something in the CIP, be it investigatory relative to the options that might be out there for us to pursue, that we would use consultants for, versus earmarking a number of 11 million or 20 million, which were thrown out at the water precinct meeting, Is that a worthwhile consideration to put into the CIP so it becomes a point of discussion when we actually do budget review and the total capital plan review?
Not a responsibility.
And I'll just share what I shared with Charlie too, that I have had, because previously we included the water precincts, some of their capital projects in here. I've had subsequent conversations with a couple other planners and then a municipal attorney, not ours, but a municipal attorney. And this was last fall at a conference. And the discussion was, unless we're including the school and the county, who are also their own government entities, we shouldn't be including another government entity, which this is further compounded by the new software, because once the CIP is in the software, it's all based on the department budgets that are in the system, so we will not have a way of actually including them in the official CIP because their budget obviously is not in our software system. So what I said to Charlie was that though, you know, their capital costs shouldn't really be in our CIP anymore, if there are capital expenses that the selectmen foresee being their costs towards water, whether that's, you know, helping the water precinct or investing in a well or whatever idea that may be, those make sense to go in from a selectman's standpoint. And whether you put it under Public Works or whether it goes in as a separate selectman's item, that could make sense.
I think it's premature at the moment to do that, but I would leave it for further conversation.
Yeah, my thought was, probably that would be your reaction. It might be worthwhile to just put it in the narrative
Yeah.
that we have discussed it, we've identified it, and it's premature, but it should be on the radars of Select Board and certainly the implications that it might have for the future of our capital planning, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's great, good question. And thanks, Charlie, and thanks, BB, for that response. Okay, I know that we have a TBD on when we're going to meet next, right, Adam?
Yeah, let's pull calendars up. So,
If you want to split, feel free. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming, appreciate it.
thank you, Richard.
And welcome to
Thank
the
you
new
all
London.
for having me.
Yeah,
Truly
thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks for jumping into this process so early in your tenure. Thanks.
The water's fine.
No more water, Joe.
So I'm on vacation next week, so I'm hoping that Tim and I could get together the end of the following week, of that first week of September, and start to put together some narrative and things for you guys, so that if we potentially looked at meeting again as a committee not until the 13th, how would that look for folks?
They're going to want to meet sooner, I'm sure. But,
I'm gone for a week starting the 14th.
Starting the 14th? Okay.
I'm on that next week, too.
And I'm also not available the next Friday morning.
I'm there on the 13th.
Okay.
So it sounds like the 13th would work. Is that
Yes, I think so. yeah.
cutting it too close for you? You good?
No, that's fine. I
Okay.
just didn't know if
Yeah.
he was considering
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
just that date.
So I think if we do, let's see, I'll just put that one on my calendar before I look at the next dates. So if we plan for committee coming together on the 13th, having an overall draft to look at, and also just to give you, I think I put this in the email yesterday, but for the public watching our video, Waste Reduction and Conservation Commission didn't feel like they had new or different capital projects at this point. So that's why they aren't here this morning. So I think we've met with everybody. I'll probably follow up with department heads because, this is the time of year when things do change a little bit at a rapid pace. So if there's anything that they need to say differently, maybe they could send us a summary email. But the intention would be have a draft out for you guys beginning of the week of the 9th, maybe middle of the week of the 9th, so that you have a couple days, and then we meet on the 13th. And then sounds like the next week is out for most folks. So if we looked at, again, meeting on the 27th to sort of wrap things up, we would have a week for buffer there to get it posted for the October planning board meetings. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. I found out yesterday that the software rollout to department heads is happening next week. I think I'm the only one that has at least seen the backside of it yet. Lynn showed me things last week because they've started to put, essentially what we had to do is give the software developers our old CIP, and so they have put it all, well, they were working on it yesterday, but they're building the CIP as if it were last year. And so then now that we have this year's updated, I will go in and make all the changes that we've talked about so far this year. I really don't quite understand what that output looks like yet, so I'm not sure what to tell you to expect because they weren't done building the projects. We couldn't do a report. They had it locked. So that will be a little bit of a variable. Hopefully if Tim and I can meet on the 6th, that gives Lynn and I a couple of days before that to jump in. But sort of that is a variable in all of this, so stay tuned. And hopefully the rollout next week for the other department heads will go well, and then when I get back, she can follow up with me.
Excellent. All right, so just to recap then, we're going to, Adam and I will meet on the 6th, no requirements from anyone else, but the next meeting of this subcommittee will be the 13th, followed by the 27th. And we'll still do, if folks are okay with it, the crack of dawn start, if that's all right. Mostly Adam, I'm looking at him because he's the one who has to drive.
I'd rather be here at 6:40 in the morning than at 8 o'clock at night, so we're all good.
Amen. Okay, great. Well, all we need now is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent. All in favor? Thanks, everybody.